do you need to know how to code to build an image generation company?
I would say it definitely helps a lot. I think at the very least, if you're running a company, probably somebody in your team needs to be somewhat technical. I think there are lots of no code / low code tools that you can use to get started nowadays. Um, you know, Probably we're still at the stage in this sort of early AI hype cycle that there's enough low hanging fruits that, just having command over basic tools, that's probably enough to impress a lot of would-be / potential customers.
Yeah.
So literally, if you just go online, like pick up an AI tool and you go down to your local sort of small business and show them, they'll probably be blown away to the point that, yeah, you probably don't actually need to know how it works.
Do you think not having any coding experience and using Claude or ChatGPT to build out an image generation company, do you think that's possible?
I've seen it done for sure, right? Like when you go on YouTube, literally, I guess like we might talk about him later on, but like Peter Levels, that's literally his whole like mantra, right? He kind of just quickly picks up these tools and uses them and like makes a lot of money. So it's definitely possible. And I guess specifically when it comes to language modeling, because, language models like, GPT and Claude are so good that they're so, they have such high adherence, meaning that it's very easy for them to understand what you want them to do.
Yeah.
So like, especially in language modeling, I think it's easy to get things done. I think it's harder in other subfields of AI. So like, I think in image generation is a bit tough because we haven't like hit that GPT-4 level model yet, where it's super easy for it to understand what you want it to do. And because of that, you still have a few of these sort of more manual or low level tweaks you have to do to the model to get it to do magical things.
Yeah. So do you think there's a limit to the product you can make if you don't know how to code while building the image generation?
There's definitely a limit, yeah, for sure. Like you can't do anything. So, there are people who push the boundaries, right? So like HeyGen. So you can literally go online, get a, text to video model to spit out a video given a text prompt. But to get it as well as they have gotten it, that requires like, you basically need to own the video stack yourself and be able to like actually understand what's going on to push it to that level.
What's
but
HeyGen?
If you're doing, so HeyGen is a tool used by businesses to create fake videos using like video avatars of themselves to sell products and to show demos to potential customers. They have other use cases, but that is, I think, what they're most famous for. So literally, like imagine you maybe take a photo or a short recording of yourself just saying a small script. And then from that point onwards, they can generate a video of you in any situation saying anything in your voice.
Wow.
And so like if you're a business, you can imagine like the leverage or the value in that. Like a lot of your customers like personalized messages.
Okay.
They pay more attention to videos in your emails. So you can literally like send out a video message of yourself, like just saying like Merry Christmas, like thank you for being our customer. Hey, you want to try out this new feature, etc. It's more personalized and like, leads to like high sales.
And how do you think you come up with a good AI image / video generation company like that? Because that sounds awesome.
I think probably with every business, the same, YC-isms, Paul Graham-isms, adages about like how to come up with a business supply, i.e. solve a problem. So I think in the case of like image generation specifically, ultimately the automation you're doing is replacing a camera. So you kind of want to ask yourself, for which customer profile is access to a camera necessary but very expensive? And then you want to like speak with them, perhaps show them a demo to validate if there are any, like intrinsic blockers that would prevent them adopting AI to solve their problems. Yeah.
So I see you're saying most of these image generation startups are trying to replace a camera in person. So for example, photo AI, that's trying to replace a professional camera. So do you think it's just about replacing? It's not really about building new capabilities that didn't exist before?
I think there's that too. And I think on the consumer side, there will be a lot of new capabilities that people will explore, but I think that requires a bit more creativity. I think sort of like the base business use case is literally, okay, in what industries we like hire somebody who comes along with maybe a studio and a camera and post editing skills, and we pay them lots of money to get this media asset generated, created. And like, can we like replace that with AI at like 100x the cost? So in the case of photo AI, it's literally like replacing your photographer. It could be replacing so personal photographer, like the person who takes your product images for your e-commerce website. It could be the surveyors that come to your house to like take photos of your house when you're selling it. You can imagine those use cases. But then I think to your point, like the real creative ideas that I think we might see in the coming months, etc., will just be like new capabilities. So like there's this YC company that has basically done like a Gen AI version of Instagram, whereby rather than taking actual photos of yourselves and your friends, it literally just creates photos of you and your friends, and you share it with, in like private social networks. So it's like a fully like Gen AI version of Instagram.
Wait, let me just understand how that works. So none of the pictures are real?
No, none.
And who are you sharing the pictures with?
So I think the way it works, you need like, so you have like you remember like back in the day, like Snapchat, it was like you and just like your private friends, like you weren't sharing it with people. It wasn't like a social media company whereby you're broadcasting media to everyone around the world. It was more of a social network where literally the people within your network you were sharing assets with. So I think you have like a private network, and like maybe everyone within that network has like agreed that their photos can be used and generated. I'm actually not sure. I've never used it. But I know it's more of a private thing, and you generate these photos and you share it within small social networks.
So me and you, for example, can be in the same group, and then it will just keep generating random pictures of me and you like holding hands in the beach or something.
Yeah, I think so. I imagine like we also get to, I think it's more, we ask, we prompt it to generate those photos as opposed to like some automation.
Interesting. So we don't actually have to do anything together anymore. We can just sit down and say, okay, what prompt do we want to come up with today? And then we just do that.
Yeah, you laugh at this, but I was actually thinking of that idea myself. You say, I was actually thinking that.
The reason, by the way, this is very funny is that every single, I would say 90% of ideas that I've seen being told to Darrell says, actually, I came up with that idea myself. 90% of startup ideas I come up with, Darrell says,
what can I say? I'm there. I'm always thinking of ideas.
How many ideas do you come up with every day?
Probably not as many as you. I'd probably say like, I'd probably do 1 or 2 major ones a week.
Oh, wow. And what's the latest image generation idea that you're working on or that you think has potential?
Yeah, so now I'm kind of similar to what I mentioned about replacing the camera. I'm working with 1 or 2 companies to help them create so what I call generative media asset. So everything from images, well, mostly images and graphics that are within their brand's aesthetic or style. So for one of them is an e-commerce company, and they obviously they create lifestyle photos for the types of products that they sell, which are kind of like cleaning supplies, etc., that you would use inside of your house. And so you can imagine that they want to show those photos being used in like a kitchen, in a living room, etc. And they spend, let's just say, a lot of money, like literally hiring actors, renting studio space, and a cameraman and a post-editing crew to like shoot these photos. It's a pretty big team. And I've been working with them for the last couple of weeks, basically trying to, like automate that using the latest and greatest image generation models. But aside from that, also was working with a company out in Singapore, the Brew Therapy, just to plug them. And they create, they sell coffee products. And as part of their marketing strategy, they've created this brand mascot. It's like a cartoon capybara, like the animal that you see in Japan. And he literally, They put him on their branding, on their packaging. They make social media reels about him. It's like a cartoon lore, to use the industry term, to sell the products. But like drawing those pictures, which they do kind of like on a daily basis, is, as you can imagine, like kind of expensive. You have to hire an illustrator to do it. But you can't just get like ChatGPT or DALL-E or whatever to like generate those pictures, because they have to be in the brand's exact aesthetic, exact style, exact pencil drawing, exact colors, the theme, etc. So I basically like help them to train a model to like generate those graphics and illustrations.
Interesting. So I can see the pattern here. The pattern is the low hanging fruits is just replace someone, replace an illustrator, replace a photographer. And as long as you do a better job than them, then there is something out there, then people are going to buy your products, because not only can you probably do it better than them, you can also do it at scale and produce like thousands at request.
Yeah, I would say for us, like the at scale piece is like the bigger piece. I wouldn't say we're necessarily like as good as like the best like photographers or illustrators, but like as soon as you've crossed past that 90% similarity threshold, then it's pretty much indistinguishable. And then you have the advantage of scale, so you can literally do it 1,000x the rate they could do it before or whatever, right? If you're willing to pay, it's literally unlimited. So yeah, that's the real piece.
That's true, because photo AI, it's not better than if an actual photographer took you to those places and took those pictures, but it's close enough, and now you could create 10,000 images doing different things, so that's why it's good. Okay, very interesting. Is there any other space that you've thought about, or any other, like, I guess, person that can be replaced to the 90th percentile that you haven't explored yet? Give people some ideas so they have something to work with.
Okay. I would say something that I did think about, again, was like the real estate space. So there are companies that have popped up that do stuff like they automatically furnish your house if you give them a picture. So say you're like a landlord and you're trying to rent out a space, and literally you haven't bought like furniture for it. You just give them the photos of the house, of the apartment, just as, and they keep everything else the same, but they put the carpet, a sofa, a plant in the background, etc. So it's like it's pretty impressive.
Is this similar to interior AI?
It's actually similar to interior AI. Yeah, I would say this one's better though, because interior AI changes like it's just literally not as good. But this one is like they only do that one thing and they do it very, very well.
Yeah.
But it's similar to interior AI.
What's the exact difference between that and interior AI?
I think from examples I've seen, interior AI sometimes like it, as they say in the industry, confabulates. Like sometimes it will change your interior. So like it might literally change your door, or like it'll change the layout of your room a bit, because it literally doesn't work exactly that well. But then I think these guys, they pushed it further a bit more, and it literally keeps everything else like exactly the same, and it changes just the living room. So it's probably it's more like a quality thing.
Yeah.
But I think the idea is basically the same.
Yeah.
And maybe
Go on.
I was gonna say, and I think also the customer they go after, the customer profile, I think is a bit different. But I think interior is like their hero section is like fire your interior designer, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's like homeowners who want to like, I don't know if this might not be true, but basically it's like, like fire the guy who's come in like design your house. And I think those other guys, they sell to more like landlords, etc. And they're like, let me just like spruce up your property photos. And the reason why I brought that up is because I was like, okay, so the idea that I had connected to that is, well, the audience members who have ever like bought a house or sold a house, you might have experienced something that I experienced, which was, so like I was helping, to sell, like my mom's house, right? And naturally, all your stuff is in the house. It's literally like all your stuff is laid over the place. Like it's not as presentable. It's not the best the house is, right? It's like it's cluttered with all of your own personal items. And a realtor tries to deal with that by hiring a photographer who comes into your house, takes pictures on a really high quality camera, and then they try and use all of this like lighting effects and stuff and make it as best as it can. But the truth is, it's never going to look good because, you know, like your old PlayStation 2 from 2004 or whatever is in the corner, and your old like trainers are blocking the hallway or whatever. Like, it's just, it doesn't look good, right? And in the same way that you have, you know, like Interior AI and this other company I mentioned, to add items to your living room, you can actually do the same thing and like subtract items from the photos of your house, or like replace them with something else, basically, period. Keep the structure of the house exactly the same, and then just replace basically all the crap that's in your house that makes it look bad. Because, yeah, like, it's not like you're selling your furniture, right? You're literally just selling the building.
Makes sense.
So you would imagine it would be valuable to realtors if they could like just update those photos to show the house as best as it could be.
That's a good idea. And I guess for even record, I don't know how hard this would be, but even for like recording videos, I'm not a huge fan of fake backgrounds. But what if you could just what if you could just remove an item? Because usually the reason people put fake backgrounds is probably because they have some. What do you have in your background that you're trying to hide?
You don't want to know.
They have weird items that they want to hide. So if you could just remove that item, surely your background will probably be good enough, right? I wonder if that could also work in that situation.
Yeah. I think so. Exactly the same thing.
Interesting. That's a very good idea. Okay, so we have a bunch of ideas. Once you have an idea, what's next?
I think so the first thing I would do is probably just like jump on one of these like cloud platforms, give you easy access, these web apps that give you easy access to some of the most powerful models, and just try to see if the model can actually do it. Because like I said, especially with image generation, you might be disappointed. So the best thing I'll do is basically check if it's within the model's capabilities, which you can basically do in like 5 minutes. If so, if you get the green light there, then I guess you probably want to like build like an MVP as quickly as you can, / go and speak to potential customers that match your initial customer profile to again validate that there aren't any like intrinsic blockers that would prevent them buying it. So I guess it's a mixture of building it so that they can see it and it helps with the demo and helps explain, as well as like just like validating that the market is there.
Yeah, and also knowing is it actually possible for the models to create something good enough or to the 90th percentile? And what kind of platforms have you seen people using, and what's your favorite?
So I would say the easiest are probably the top 3 easiest that I use if I'm just trying to like just test a model quickly is Replicate. That's probably like number 1. So if you go on Replicate, they basically, like, a lot of people have hosted a bunch of open source models on Replicate, and they have a very easy form-like page for each model where you can literally just put in like your prompt. You know, if it's like an image to image model that, you know, gets an image and turns it into another image, you can easily upload that image, literally just pressing buttons, right? Like, the exact same user experience you get from using like Fowl, something called Fowl AI, or maybe Fowl.com. But if you go into Google and you just type in FAL AI, you'll see it. It's basically like Replicate as well. And then you can also, so you might have heard of Stability AI and Stable Diffusion. They literally host their own API. They've made Stable Diffusion and they host it themselves on their platform, Stability AI. So if you go to Stability AI, you can actually just easily play with a lot of their models there as well.
Sure.
That's if you want to like run the model. If you're just interested in seeing what other people have built with the models, you might want to go on like Glyph, GLIF. It's a place where people like just host a lot of like machine learning apps that they've built, and you can play around with that. If your idea is more in like the video space, like generating videos, I would try out either Runway, Kling. Probably those 2 are the easiest.
And what's the pricing model, right? Like for these companies, do they charge monthly, annually, or pay as you go?
So a lot. So I'd say that there are typically 2 buckets that I've seen. a lot of these companies employ a token-based billing model, whereby you purchase tokens that you can then use on their website. So tokens are like literally like coupons that you can use to pay for compute. And it might be like, oh, like give us like $10 or $20, and now your account has $20 in it. And every single time you use a model, we just like decrement that account. And then like to give you some indication of pricing, to run like the best image generation model there is out there, like to generate one image, you could probably generate something like 20 to 30 images for the price of $1.
Okay, that's very good. And these software, like the end products usually charge like up to $30-$40. I know for the AI, $9 to $60 per month to use it. So I guess the margin is also always really, really good there.
Yeah, exactly. Like the cost of using SaaS to generate it is like literally the multiple is crazy.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here. That's why we're makers. I'm trying to get that money.
Out of all the platforms you just said, which one's your favorite and why do you use it?
I use both. I use Replicate the most, and then I use Replicate and File. It's kind of the same, but I use Replicate the most. Yeah. And the reason why is because network effects. So on Replicate, like everyone else has put all their models there, which means the platform is bigger, which means that everybody puts their models there as well. So if you're looking for any model, you can find it there. And just like clarify that point a bit more. So there are a bunch of base like foundation models that everything is built on top of. There are very few of them. So you might have Stable Diffusion 1.5, Stable Diffusion 2, Stable Diffusion XL, Stable Diffusion 3, and you have like Flux. So right now there's only one Flux model. That's for like image generation. That's basically it. And then what you have is every, Tom, Dick, and Harry basically shows up and takes one of these base model and trains it further for a specific use case. So it's better at a specific downstream task. So it could be like some people have trained it to be better at generating anime, trained it to be better at generating realistic photos of people of whatever category. And then they then host those models again back on Replicate. So you basically have this crazy fan out of models where you have those very few base models, and then someone has built like a layer 2 model on top of that. And then somebody else has taken those and like fine-tuned it for a bunch of different downstream tasks. And then you have like this huge like web of like models, to the point where you're like, which one should I use? Whatever. But it's very easy to find any model on either on Replicate because like everyone hosts it there. I would also, technically, Hugging Face is like the biggest hub. Hugging Face is like another website. It's like the biggest hub for AI models, but I would definitely like not use it if you're not technical. It's a lot easier to just use Replicate, I would say.
Okay. And what's the purpose of using someone else's model as opposed to just using Stable Diffusion and then building on top of it?
I would say that basically somebody else has already done the work of fine-tuning it to be better at a task that you might be interested in versus you paying the GPU compute costs of training it to be good at that task yourself. So, for example, back in when Stable Diffusion was like the biggest model there was, it had a really hard time, I guess, generating like photorealistic people. So these guys built this model called Juggernaut, like good at that. And for them to have built that, let's say the base models are typically trained on like the order of hundreds of thousands to even more than that, but millions of photos. And then the guys who do the fine tuning might train them on like tens of thousands of images. Like you and I are not going to find 10,000 images in the first place to then be training models. So we're just going to use what somebody else has like wasted their time, not wasted, spend their time doing. And then if that's not good enough, then maybe we will fine tune it some more on, training data set that is like a 10 or 100, the size of that. So, for me, like the work I do, we usually do like a few dozen examples. Like the fine tuning is only like a few dozen to like 100 examples. Because I'm stood on the shoulders of giants who have been training it for like literally from like millions of photos to hundreds of thousands, blah, 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 all the way down.
I see. And just to understand cost, if you train it on millions of photos, how much is that going to be?
So you probably look at, it's probably like, it probably costs like 10 million to train a foundation model.
Whoa.
Like,
oh,
so
like
they're cheaper than
the foundation model.
Yeah,
is
yeah.
Stable Diffusion. Is Juggernaut
exactly, yeah.
a foundation model too?
So Juggernaut is based on Stable Diffusion.
Okay.
So that would probably cost, I have no idea, but not 10 million, like way, way cheaper than that.
But more than something that indie hackers like ourselves would be able to afford.
Yeah, like I wouldn't, if you're an indie hacker, you're not training Juggernaut. Yeah, you could probably afford it actually. I don't actually know, like I don't have a reference point, but
I can show you my bank account and you let me know if I can afford it.
no,
you already
I
know.
mean, I don't know. I don't know the details of Juggernaut, but I think, let's just say the basest model, somebody's paying like 10 million to train it. And then there are models that are built on top of that, all the way to someone like us indie hackers who might pay $10 to train, to do our final fine tune on top of all of that stuff.
Yeah. And is it possible to, so let's say you have Juggernaut that's really good at faces, and let's say you have another model that's really good at clothes.
Yeah.
And then let's say another model that's really good at, I don't know, hairstyles. Is it possible to combine all those models in one, or are you limited to just building on top one of those models?
Yeah, there are techniques for doing this. They go from advanced / doesn't really work well to easier to do / doesn't really work well again. On the like advanced side, there's this concept called model merging, where literally like you get the weights for all of these models stacked side by side, and then you make like a new model. I don't actually know how it works, but you basically merge the weights in some way to make a new model for your use case. I don't know if that'll work well. You probably have to, that's very technical.
Yeah.
But like the easiest way is probably to use all those other models as what they call in-painting models to augment the photo. So what I would do is I would get like the first model that is good at, say, generating the person. I would say generate, the full picture, the girl wearing the dress or whatever. And then the girl will be good, but the dress will be bad. And then I'll get the model that's good at the dress, and I will what we call in-painting. So you basically like mask the original photo. In other words, you kind of like you block and you mask it, and then you tell the model that's good at dresses, okay, now just generate a dress, and so it will fill in that space that you sort of blanked out or masked, and just generate the dress, and then you would repeat that for each of the other features that you care about. So the hairstyle, the shoes.
How hard is it to make the dress? Let's say the model that is really good for clothes, not to edit something else that it's not meant to edit, like the face. Is that hard?
In the case of masking, the trick will just be that you only mask the area that has the dress. So it's only allowed to
change that
into that area.
Okay. How effective are these techniques?
Depending on so there's some models that are tuned specifically for masking tasks. So they're very good at masking, and then some of them are not. And I would say the way masking works is, for a bad model will just like generate a girl wearing a dress, will basically generate the whole photo again. And then what you like basically encode, like what you would do is basically say, take the original image and then just copy and paste everything but the dress pixels onto the new image. And so somebody will look at it and it will look like two images have literally been glued on top of one another.
I see. And then something
that's like
combine those things to make it look better. Another model combines them.
Usually it's not even another model. Usually it's like just image processing. So what you would do is like around the seams, you would just like what they call blend it. So you do like an averaging of the pixels so that it looks like it's literally looks like it's like merging from one area to another.
I see.
But then like there are people who there are literally papers on this for better techniques.
Yeah.
So like one technique you can do instead is you could do like image to image generation, whereby so you got your first image that you got where it's like good, the person's good but the dress is bad. And then maybe what you could do is so the way these models generate images in the first place, they start with like a completely blank image. So an image where all the pixels are like random noise, let's say. Mm-hmm. And then they go through a process that is called diffusion. It's actually reverse diffusion, but let's just call it diffusion, or we'll call it sampling, where they basically start with that image, and then for a number of steps that you tell it to run for, so say you say run for 20 steps, 50 steps, 100 steps, at each step, it will subtract noise from that original very, very noisy image. And let's just say by the final step, it's extracted all the noise until it matches the prompt you've given it. So the model was basically being trained. If I see a very noisy image and someone says, generate a picture of Apple, which pixels do I need to like subtract from this blank image to make an apple? And I have like 50 or 20 or 30, depending on the number of steps I've been told to do it for, attempts at subtracting noise. So you kind of imagine it's just like defuzzying it, or just like making it look better at every step until it's actually a picture of an apple. And literally, depending on what the noise of the image is, where it thinks it needs to subtract, the pixels will change, right? So it's like, okay, this picture kind of looks like an apple on a tree. Okay, so I need to subtract pixels from this area, and in this area, and in this area, and then I'll finally have a picture of an apple on the tree. Well, this picture looks like an apple on the table. Okay, so I need to subtract pixels from this area, this area, this area. Mm-hmm. So you see how we had our picture with the woman in the dress? Yeah. If you then add noise to that picture, so it looks like a fuzzy picture of a woman in a dress, it will be like, okay, from this point onwards, I have to subtract pixels from here, noise from here, here, to get to a woman with a dress. And so if you give that to the model that's good at the dress, you're basically saying, okay, start from this point and now you go. And then it goes and then tries to like basically make a nice image from that starting point.
I always thought the model adds, I never thought they subtract. I thought they add to the canvas until it becomes close to whatever the prompt.
Yeah, I guess, it's both adding and subtracting, I guess, because like, I guess if you're subtracting a negative, you're adding.
Yeah, you're basically adding.
That
makes sense. Yeah. When you look at like products like Photo AI, is he having to do all this to build something like that, or is he just using something very simple like Flux?
Yeah, he's not having to do. So that's the funny thing with like, I guess it goes to my point with image models versus language models. Mm-hmm. In the world of language models, unless you're doing something very advanced, maybe if you're building like, well, obviously if you're building literally a very advanced chatbot like ChatGPT or whatever, you actually have to go into the details of some of this stuff. But for the most part, they're so good now that you can basically just you can literally just tell the model to do whatever you want because it's just so smart. But in the case of image generation, there is more low level than that. Yeah. And you do have to like do some more manipulate. So that diffusion process I outlined, where it's running for 20 steps, 50 steps or whatever. If you call an API, you don't have to worry about that whatsoever. But for the people who are doing like the really cool, innovative products, a lot of them are touching that code because literally, depending on how you do that subtraction or sampling process, you get like better or worse results.
Yeah.
So we're literally still in that stage where it's more, you see what I mean? Like there's more like dark art to it than in the language model world, where it's like it works the best. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah. Where do you think? Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, but in the case of Peter Levels, I don't think so. Firstly, like I think and obviously like Peter, like I respect a lot, but he literally like he says that he's not an ML guy, right? Yeah. So I don't think he would be getting into the weeds of it. He might have hired someone to do it, but I think to get the results, maybe to get something that's 80% as good as what he's done, you could literally just go into replicates, go to like fine tune Flux or fine tune SDXL, like Stable Diffusion, upload pictures and it will literally do it for you. Everything's fully automated. They kind of figured out the best parameters to use, etc. for that kind of stuff anyway.
Yeah, makes sense. And where do you think the money is? Do you think the money is in creators or makers, should I say, like levels that are building things with all these models that are being launched? Or do you think it's with the, I guess I'll call them scientists that are like tweaking underneath, understanding all this fusion and all the craziness behind these models?
I think what Peter Level said is very apt, which is it's like the way things are turning out and the way that we get a state-of-the-art model that is like open source every like 6 months and it's better than all the closed source models literally every 6 months. So like literally up until 2 months ago, the best model in the world was like Midjourney's like V6, which was like a closed model. You could only use it if you pay for Midjourney, right?
Yeah.
And then like literally 2 months ago, Flux comes out and it's effectively free and it's better than every closed model, par none. Like it's better than everything, period.
Yeah.
And in 6 months time from now, like it just gets better and better and better. So I think, so because of that, Peter said this thing, which is literally the only differentiator is in like product engineering and your ability to think and build products. So like knowing how to do all this ML stuff, I don't think matters. Like over the long term, even the medium term, I don't think it matters that much. I think all the value comes from like literally like thinking of products to build.
Yeah.
Like 100%. I think in terms of like just making money, if you do know this stuff, you will command a very high salary and you can go and work at like OpenAI or whatever.
Or the company
will make a ton of money.
The models.
Yeah. But Peter Level makes more than they do. So like, he might be an outlier, but still, I do think that a lot of the value comes from understanding the problems of customers and like figuring out what people want and building it.
Yeah. So I guess in this case, it would be like when the smartphone was launched, understanding, I don't know, RAM and whatever goes on and the chips behind the smartphone is not really how you make the most money from that new technology. It's actually just building the apps and building all the Instagrams and whatnot that were built on top of these
For sure.
technologies.
Yeah, I definitely think that. Yeah.
Would you say Google? I guess if I think about it, Google is more dark art than understanding the user, correct?
Yeah.
But then there's not too many Googles. I guess that's the point. The point is probably by understanding the models deeply, you can build some Google. But at the end of the day, there's way more Amazons and Instagrams that are just built on top existing things, and they just have really good they just have really good products and customer experience.
Yeah, I think so. It's crazy. It's like the number of stories you hear about how people have made money with AI is crazy.
Yeah.
Like Rich GPT, what's called maxing. People are just making these quote unquote like gimmicky apps.
Easy.
Like quick and easy.
Yeah.
And they're making all that money. But
since you probably had the idea for Rich GPT, right? Before they had it.
Nah. I'm proud to say I didn't think anybody needed an app to sort them out, like sort out their risk, but I kid, of course. No, I didn't think of that. No.
In terms of launching the model, so you've trained the model, you've trained it on top a base model. Is that what you call it? Foundation model.
Yeah.
Maybe added some other models on top of it, combined, used Flux or whatever. Now you have the model. What does launching it look like?
So I think a lot of a typical like go-to-market strategy that a lot of these AI models use, because like I guess AI has like the wow factor, and a lot of companies, what they do is like, I guess they like build a page that has like a gallery on it where they just show like what the community has like created and generated with it. But like literally what I would do is like a lot of the time I would like go on like Reddit, on like some subreddit, and then share examples of what like my work has produced. And then people get excited by that. Like you have literally the way I discovered some of my customers was like through Reddit. Like people would be like, I know AI is doing this really cool thing in my space, but I don't know how it works. Is there anyone can like help me understand how to, like coax the model to make it do certain stuff for me. So I think literally, I guess it's you build it and then you go to places where people are to show it to them.
What type of subreddit? Are these AI subreddits, or do you go to the use case for that thing? So if you're building interior AI, would you go on an interior design subreddit?
Yeah. So I would say both. Um, you have to be careful though. I guess you have to be careful because like if you go on subreddits and it looks like you're just like shilling a product, then you can get kicked out.
Yeah.
And also you have to be careful because as much as we love it because we think it's going to make us rich, there are people who hate AI because they think it's going to make them poor. So like I've made the mistake of like going to subreddits, like for example, literally r/ I made this, or like some design subreddit where it's just like filled with like human designers.
Yeah.
And being like, hey, I just automated this design work. And then just getting like absolutely, basically canceled. And people saying like, you're stealing the work of human beings, you're awful, you're a terrible person. Remember the time when I built a card generation, a website to make like cards using AI. And I shared it in one of these channels, right? And I literally like, people just went on the website just to make cards saying that the owner of this site is like, expletive, insert expletive. Yeah, so like you basically have to be careful because some people are like literally like anti-AI.
Yeah.
But then beyond that, yeah, like I'll post the work on like, so a good subreddit, like my favorite one is r/stable diffusion. There's like literally a treasure trove for understanding how image generation models work and what the latest and greatest things are going on inside of it. So to be honest, I actually don't share commercial work there, but I read that one like the most, because that's just where you get your best news from, I guess. And then, but beyond that, yeah, like I guess you have to find some way of making it relevant to a very niche subreddit community that you think your customer profile might belong to.
Makes sense. And right now, what's your daily routine like? Walk me through what a day in your life looks like while you're building out all these image generation companies.
So, I mean, the first thing, literally, like, I wake up, I read a bit of The Economist.
What time do you wake up?
Between 7:30 and 8.
Oh, so you don't have to wake up at 5 a.m. to build $1 million company?
Maybe. I don't think you have to. I hope not. Because if not, well, then I need to sort that out. But no, I wake up mostly because of my body clock, I guess it's just like designed to wake up 7:30 to 8. To be fair, when I worked at Google, like that was the time, like we used to start working at 10:30. So I think like having waking up later is like, I think I'm just used to it. I be up that late, 7:30, 8. But basically, yeah, the first thing I do is like, I'll read like some of my, like, I read The Economist, so I'll read a bit of that. Not too much of it. Typically what I would then do is like, I read a bit of The Economist and a bit of a fiction book. So like I read a lot of psychological thrillers. What
are you reading right
now? So I've just finished reading a book called None of This Is True. And now I'm reading a book called A Woman in the Window. But yeah, like I enjoy that. Something else I do though is I do some technical research work. So like literally everything from like reading a bit of a paper that I'm interested in at the moment, to doing like a course. So I'll do a bit of that, and then I'll do a bit more of that later on in the day. But then I usually stop, and then I'll go to the gym. And then when I come back, after I've eaten, then that's probably when I start coding and like training models. Like literally, like today, as we're talking right now, like I have like a model training in the background. So like I'll literally like load onto like a GPU on the cloud and then like spin up a model relevant to the work I'm doing for like the companies that I'm working with. Try to see if I can like, it's basically running an experiment that I had some idea about. And then I should probably do that in the morning because it's like so I can at least have it running when I'm like at the gym or whatever. But like I'll do that. And then depending on the week, like I might also do more product work. So like I have to build like the actual product that the people use my AI in. So it's like currently the one I have right now is like an interface similar, I guess, to like ChatGPT.
What tech stack are you using for that?
So Next.js for the front end. I have Next.js, MongoDB, I deploy stuff on Render. I use Google Cloud for like my storage bucket for things. Vercel. Yeah, the usual, I guess. The usual indie hacker starter pack.
Combination.
Yeah, so I'll do that. And then I'll basically be doing that like throughout until like the rest of the day, really. Until I'll have dinner, I'll come back, I'll do that. Like it's either building products or like running like training models. Depending on the day of the week. And then the last thing I do before I sleep is
we want to know
that. Why? What? Why? What do you think it is?
I don't know.
What have you been doing?
You probably read an AI book. I'll fall asleep on it.
Nah, I mean, it depends. Like, if it's a sports night, I might watch football. If it's aside from that, I just watch a TV show. I guess I'll fall asleep.
Thanks. And then you repeat the same thing again until you build the next $1 million company. Okay, Darrell, that was very insightful. Thank you, and have a good day.